This is perhaps the biggest obstacle to successful future thinking. The fact that many people believe themselves to be well informed, but their head is mainly full of crap. They have overdosed on various news sources. They've spent far too much time on blogs, on Twitter, and at the newsstand. So they know a lot of things, but the worldview they have is slightly skewed. This never becomes clearer than when you look at homicide statistics, because as it turns out, the risk of getting murdered is at a historical low. It has, in fact, never been lower. We're about to run out of murder as a species. A Dutch study showed that the average lifespan of companies in the world, big or small, is 12.5 years, nearly as long as the average woodpecker. Which makes you wonder, why time is kind to wine, right? Time is kind to the arts. Time is kind to sculptures. Why is time so unkind to business? How can we live longer than woodpeckers? And I believe there are 4 ways. 4 things that you might already be applying, or that you should start to apply when the future begins. The first, that's easy. Well, it's challenging, but I mean, it's the DNA of all ideas, right? You try it out. Alfred Nobel started by blowing things up, including his baby brother. And we don't do that anymore. Because we have risk managers and compliance officers and R&D departments and budgets and processes and toll gates. So the experimental mindset, the serendipity, has been designed out of companies. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic as blowing up a sibling, although that can be nice. It can be something like this. You know, in 1988, Per Gessle, one half of the fantastic Swedish pop duo Roxette, bought a very expensive synthesizer. And he brought it home, it was about the size of this table, brought it home, plugged it in, and he started to read the manual. So, do I have anyone here born in 1982 or later? We used to have something called a manual. It was like a big, thick paper thing that you had to, but it's not important. Per Gessle understood not a single word, put it aside, and instead, like a child, he started to press buttons, experiment. And when he'd been pressing buttons for a little while, a bass line kicked in. And he couldn't switch it off. Because he had no idea how it started. Some of you remember that you could actually destroy computers by pressing the wrong button in the 80s. I meet people to this day who believe that if they press the wrong button on Google, they will accidentally erase the entire internet. So, Per Gessle is panicking, but he reboots by pulling the plug out and plugging it back in, and the bass line grows quiet. And then he goes to the studio where Roxette are recording a new album, and the guitarist of Roxette is trying to make his electric guitar sound like a sitar. And when Per Gessle hears that, he starts to hum the bass line again, and together they compose what would become the biggest hit of Roxette's career. Just a little bit louder. It's Roxette, please. Here is the sitar chord. Ding, 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 ding. You know, the moral of the story is quite clear. Had Per Gessle enjoyed reading manuals, we would never have had the look. And the problem in many companies is that they suffer from something called experience chauvinism. They start to speak in acronyms. What's the status of that SKU? What's PON? All of these rubbish that only makes you sound like an idiot. So you think you know the entire industry. There's no need for you to experiment. I was the same way as a parent. I have 2 4-year-old boys. I was like, no, stop it. Father knows best. You know, drop the knife. But then I realized that, you know, I should encourage experimentation. I should say, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Inspired by a book called 50 Dangerous Things You Should Let Your Children Do. A wonderful guide for parenting, a great leadership manual. In turbulent times, in foggy times, make a list of 50 dangerous things you should try. I mean, some dangerous things are stupid, they don't lead to greater innovation, they don't really lead to new things, but we need to recycle failures too, right?